guys, well, like I said, if I was going to definitely bring in someone today that was going to be very inspirational. I've known her for quite some time here, and well, Andrea, it's good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, it's great to see you too, Mac. Thanks for inviting me. I'm doing great for a Monday. How about you in sunny Florida?
You know what? I am right now. The weather is starting to get a little bit hotter now, and so I'm enjoying the last little bit before the humidity and the real heat wave comes in. So, but no, but so far so good. But yeah, how are things with you in Jackson Hole? I can't wait to ask you more in the segment here, more
Yeah,
about that.
things are really going great here. Skiing ended last weekend for the resort. So we're kind of here in the mud season, it's called. It's basically the off season before all the summer tourists come. So a lot of the restaurants close for a couple weeks and it's just locals here. And it's a really nice time to be in Jackson when you live here. It's not a good time to visit because there's not much to do. There's still snow everywhere. So you can't go hiking and it's still kind of cold at night. So definitely no camping or anything like that. Some of the hardcore skiers still ski in the backcountry, but your girl does not do that. So I am done. The skis are put away until November. But yeah, just
Okay.
enjoying time. I just got a new little dog a week ago. So I'm really trying to spend some time bonding with her. So just very quiet for the spring, which is nice for a change.
I love that. I love it. So you are a new fur baby mom now. So what
That's
I'm
right.
kind of curious here. Just what made you wanted to bring in and getting a dog this time?
Well, I had always wanted to have a French bulldog, but being solo, it's a lot of work with a puppy. And I found a breeder in Utah that retires the mommy dogs after about 2 years when they've had two litters. So Chloe is already 3 years old. She just turned three last month, and she's already potty trained and just a perfect angel. So it's like the best scenario that you could hope for when you get a dog. And she only weighs 20 pounds, so she's little, but kind of stocky. So she's very cute. But she snorts a lot, so if you hear that in the background, I'm petting her head right now. She's real quiet when I do that, but I think you probably heard her bark a second ago. She's just learned about mirrors, so she's barking at herself. It's very cute.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
But that's
Okay.
how it just seemed like a good time. There's never a perfect time, so I thought might as well just do it. I work from home, so I have plenty of time to spend with her. But so far it's been really easy and really great, and it's made me go on 3 walks a day, which is two more than normal. So it's good.
Okay. Well, I can only imagine, like, because where you live at, and I know this is something I'll dig more later into the segment, but I'm sure it's like, from what I've seen, from what you have posted on social media, like, there is a lot of very scenic places to go, so it's probably great for walking a dog.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. She gets cold in the morning. She's really kind of short haired and small, so she won't go on a walk till I put her sweater on. It's very cute. So she loves having clothes on, and she's the star of my neighborhood. Everyone just stops us to talk to her. So, but yeah, I'm worried about the coming winter in like November, December, because it does snow a lot, and she seems to be a little hesitant about the snow that's still here right now from this past winter. So we'll see what happens with that. But hopefully she'll be in a good rhythm between now and then, and she won't notice it as much. And I'll have to get her a little bit of a heavier coat, but she's very cute and very chill. So I'm very happy.
I love that. I love it. I love it. Well, well, first things first is, Andrea, I want to thank you for coming on here. And one of the reasons why I wanted to invite you, because definitely this is you're part of the theme of what I'm trying to promote with this new podcast is because not only are people chasing the dream, but some people are living the dream. And I kind of wanted to just go through about, like, where you started, how you got to where you are, because I mean, you live a very inspirational life. And I kind of wanted to first talk about this kind of how we met, because Andrea and I, we're used to be neighbors when I first moved back from California. Um, this was in 2019, I want to say. I think it was
Hmm.
2019. And
Yeah, the summer.
yeah, yeah. And I think I met you, if I recall, it was at the grand opening? Was it the finally the grand opening of the building that we were living in? I think it was the rooftop party, correct? Is
Well,
that
I
correct?
think it was that when the pool was also opening, and you had met our other neighbor, Amber, who I had also met at the pool. And so that's how I think we had met at that party. Yeah.
That's
Which was a
okay.
great building. Yeah. Brand new. We were the first people to live in our unit. So that was
Sure
always
were.
fun. But that's it. I don't remember the day, but it probably would have been around this time in 2019, give or take,
Okay.
maybe May.
Yeah, yeah. Because if I recall, I remember I moved. Um, that was March of 2019 when I came back. So it's shortly somewhere around there.
Mhm.
Yeah. But oh my gosh. Well, this is great. Well, one of the things I wanted to start is with you is it's kind of just like telling our audience about your background, like where you're from. And because I know you went to law school and there are certain things about you that I was like, you know what? There's things I don't know about Andrea. I'm very curious to ask about, even learn about myself here. But
Okay.
yeah, so just kind of like, yeah, from like like where did you grow up at? Where did you come from? And we'll just start there.
Well, I'm from a really small town in Kentucky, in eastern Kentucky. It's called Ashland. It is the last town in Kentucky before you cross the bridge into West Virginia if you're on I-64. So I don't know where your listeners, if they're everywhere, but it's right at the foothills of where the Appalachian Mountains start. So that's where I grew up. My family and like generations back are some of the original settlers of that area. So lots of history there. Both of my parents are from there. Neither one of my parents went to college. They divorced when I was a baby. I don't know if you knew that. So I think I was about 18 months old. So my earliest memories, my mother was already with my present day stepfather. They've been together a long time. And then my father remarried that same year to my stepmother. So growing up, that was normal for me to have divorced parents and step parents and everything else. And then later on, my mom and stepdad have my only sibling is my brother. He's technically my half brother, but we don't really think about it like that. Other than we don't look alike at all. I look like our mom, and he looks like my stepdad. So sometimes in the past, people have mistaken us for being a couple, which is always super awkward when we hang out. But I just have the one sibling, so that's kind of where I grew up, and it was a great place to grow up as a child, but not a lot of industry there as a and as an adult to have for jobs and things like that. It's what you would expect about Kentucky. Some parts of it are just a lot of poverty and very rural and things like that. So
I love that. I did not even put the correlation together that you and I are both small town people. That's great
mhm.
because me growing up near Blacksburg, Virginia, and for the ones who don't know, that's home of Virginia Tech. So, wow, okay, because I had a few friends of mine growing up that did a little bit of hiking on the Appalachian Trail. So, how interesting is that? Okay, all right,
Yeah.
and so for you, and this is a great to really hear. So something. Did you get the bug after high school? You were like, oh my god, okay, it's time for me to leave and go to the big city like me, or when did you make the transition there?
Well, I didn't really get that bug until law school. So I went to college and then I went straight into law school and I was just trying to scrape by. I had a lot of part-time jobs. I did have a scholarship for college, but it only covered tuition. So I was sort of on my own with room and board, which I never lived in a dorm. It was just cheaper to live in an apartment. So I had roommates and worked a lot. And then when I went off to law school, I went to law school in Ohio. That's when I decided that I was going to move to, in my mind, a big city. So I was either going to move to Boston or Charleston, South Carolina. And I really couldn't decide. I was just having a hard time deciding. And in law school, you have to decide kind of in advance because you have to apply to take the bar exam months and months before they actually administer it. So I hadn't moved yet, but I needed to pick. And this is a true story. I know you don't know this story, but there were witnesses. It was the fall of 2006. I graduated from law school early, a semester early. And we can talk about that in a minute when we talk about living abroad, how I pulled that off to be done or a semester early. But It was, I think, around September, October of '06, and I was at a bar with classmates, and I flipped a coin, and it was heads Boston, tails Charleston, and that was it because I just really couldn't decide. I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't know anybody in either place, but I really love history. I'm kind of a nerd, and so those both of those cities are just super historical. I'm sure you know if you've been to either one of them or both of them, and both on the coast. I love the ocean, and so I was just like, that's it. So it was heads, and that was Boston. So that's how that happened. So I signed up for the Massachusetts bar exam that fall, and I took the bar exam in February, which was helpful because everyone else taking it then had already failed it once because the normal time to take it is in the summer. So I passed, fortunately, on the first try. But yeah, I moved to Boston like the day after Christmas of 2006. So that's how I was in Boston all those years. Just hustled, honestly. Like I worked a million jobs there too, till it took me almost 10 months to get a real like attorney job at a law firm. So I was interning at Deutsche Bank in the financial district there and made a lot of network connections. And that's ultimately how I got my first firm job. Being from out of state and not going to law school there also was kind of an uphill battle. But in the end, it worked out well. So that's how I got the bug to move away from Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia area.
Wow. Okay. Because your college and grad experience is kind of similar, like mine. Because yeah, I remember I was working a lot as well. Yeah, so I understand the pain of what you went through there. I have, until this very day, I've only flown into Boston's airport. I've actually never explored the city. But
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic place.
okay. And you've been to I've heard about this place, the place where was it Paul Revere?
Oh yeah, in the North End there.
Okay.
That's like Little Italy part of Boston. Boston's a really walkable city. It's much better than New York. Sorry to anyone listening who's a big New
Oh,
Yorker,
wow.
but it has all the things New York has, but like without all of the annoyances. And
Ah,
it's just very charming and old, everything is old. You can walk the Freedom Trail, and it's just
okay.
right in the city, all of those historic sites. So I would encourage you to go for a weekend. Right now, like April and May and then September are the best times to go. The weather is just gorgeous, and it's
Great.
very pleasant. It's not really humid. Doesn't get super hot till like right in the thick of the summer, probably like July, August. It gets a little bit hot. And then, of course, it's cold in the winter there. If you don't do the outdoor winter activities, it can be a little bit of a long winter. But yeah, Boston is great. So I feel like you would love it given all of your travels and everywhere you go and checking out all those old churches and, historic sites. Boston is just jam packed full of that stuff. And then the food scene, of course, is really great too.
Good to know. Okay, because
Yeah.
I've never actually heard nobody that I have affiliated with or anybody I've known that has ever done business or went to school in Boston say anything about the food. So, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to add that to my list. Now I know when is a good travel season. So I definitely have to explore that. I certainly will.
Yeah, and
Um,
where you live, I'm sure you can pop up there for a weekend. You must have a nonstop flight, so you're very lucky with that.
that's true. Good point. Because I did when I flew into Boston that one time, it was a layover before I had to fly to where was I going? I don't know. It'll come back to me later. But I will say Logan Airport was quite nice when I was there. So, but yeah, well, I will definitely add that to my list. If anybody else who hasn't gone, definitely something to do for a weekend trip. So I wanted so now that you graduated law school and then you started your career. So you started your career in Boston and
That's right.
then okay, okay. And then you made your way down to DC. Or how did you get to DC? I guess that segue of your career.
Yeah, so in 2013, I was working for a firm in Boston that was doing a lot of business. So I work in banking, the backstory, I think you knew that as a
Yeah.
lawyer in that industry. And the firm at the time had a really large client, headquartered in Charlotte. I can't say the name, but it's not hard to figure out. And we were doing a lot of North Carolina work, and they knew that my parents lived in North Carolina. They retired and moved there, and they had floated the idea of, would you like to go to Raleigh and start an office for us there? We'll pay for it. We'll pay for you to wave into the bar. And at that point in time, I had been in Boston for 7 years, I think, and it's a very expensive city. And I was still in 2013 paying off student loans. And so I thought, okay, here could be a really good opportunity to move somewhere a little bit cheaper, a little bit closer to family. And so that's what I did. And it was heartbreaking because I do love Boston, but I also think about that even to this day, like that memory of like I was all in my very like middle to late 20s and early 30s, so I don't know if that was part of why it was so great, but I do love those memories, so I'd like try to leave them there. I don't know if I would move back at this point, but that firm anyway that I work for, I waved into the bar of North Carolina, and what that means is you don't have to take the bar exam, but it's a lot of paperwork, and it took the better part of almost 10 months. And so that is how we've glossed over the first time I lived abroad. I know you wanted to ask me about that, but the second time I lived abroad, my apartment lease was up in Boston, and I still didn't have my North Carolina license yet. So I put all my stuff in storage, and I moved to Spain for the summer. And I stayed exactly 90 days because I didn't have a visa, like literally flew out on the 90th day, which in hindsight, I'm not sure anyone would have cared if I had stayed longer. Nobody asked, but you know me, a little bit of a stickler. So that's when I lived in Barcelona for those 3 months and took this Spanish immersion class. And then when I came back, I still didn't have the bar license. It was like another 3 months, but I went ahead and got the apartment in Raleigh. And I lived there for 3 years in Raleigh, Durham. I lived in Durham for a little bit, and then Raleigh also. So that was really interesting. But what happened was the firm kind of, I think they looked and saw that they were making so much money on my bar license. I was the only North Carolina attorney at the firm, and they didn't really have the need to develop the firm to be bigger in Raleigh. So we never had a physical space. I was working from home. Dating is really challenging in Raleigh at that point because I think I was 32 then. And so everybody that age is already married, kids, the whole program, and it was really spread out. And just, I don't know, I didn't like living there. I know people really like that area, but it was just so much driving, and I didn't find it like that great. And so a couple years went by of me doing that, and I just kept asking the partners, that I work for. I said, when is this office coming? When are more people coming? And they just kept kicking the can down the proverbial road. And so that is when I started looking for a new job, and that is how I got to DC. I switched firms in 2015 is when I moved to Alexandria. So that's a very long-winded answer of like I did Boston, Raleigh, and then DC area. So I know that you probably didn't know all that info, but that's, part of my journey of like what you wanted to talk about. I've taken a lot of risk and, had to move and had to hustle, like, and it was not easy, but it was, what's got me here. So I'd remind myself of that when I think of those challenges from long ago.
And what's funny? What I love about this is, since even, you and I are both from a small town, even, close friends of mine until this very day still live where we all grew up. And
Right.
nothing wrong with that at all. It's just when I hear about, all the different cities that you've moved to, that I've moved to, because I mean, South Florida, this makes my fourth major city in the U.S. So, but you have even, something that I've never done, but I've always was interested in was, living abroad, and your first experience of what was that kind of like adjusting to that, because going from the American lifestyle to living in Spain your first time around, even though it was 90 days, like what were some of your challenges in that first, few weeks of just trying to adjust?
Yeah. So my first time living abroad was not Spain. That was the second time. The first
Oh,
time was
okay.
I was in law school, and I did a study abroad in law school with the French court system. So I lived in France. That was my minor in college. So I speak French and wanted to study sort of the civil law system. I don't know if you're familiar. American law is based on common law, like the English law, obviously, with our history of that. And so I lived in France for 4 months doing that study abroad. Well, it was almost 4 months. It was like the very beginning of May till the end of August. And so that was the first time that I had been to Europe for more than just like a vacation. And I would say the biggest adjustment for me was just the food, like grocery shopping, how everyone seems to go once a day to get groceries. I wasn't really in that mindset. And like my apartment just had this tiny fridge, so you couldn't really buy groceries for more than a day or two anyway. There was no space for it. So everything was very fresh. And growing up in my small town in Kentucky, like unfortunately, we did eat a lot of processed food, stuff I wouldn't eat now. I mean, we were eating, we weren't poor, but we certainly didn't have a lot of extra money for, anything like organic. I don't even know that that was a word that I knew until I was about 25, honestly. But yeah, just
Yeah.
everything, the culture and the people, and the walking around, like that was really great. And so that was sort of what inspired me in law school. That living in France, the city lifestyle was like, this is what I want in America. I want to live somewhere I can walk everywhere. And so Boston was really great for that. I didn't have a car for several years when I lived there. And then I got one when I started going to court for work, outside of the city. But yeah, it was great. And so I had already had that experience when I moved to Spain. And it's not like I moved there, you're just there for months at a time, but it's definitely more than you get on like a week-long trip. You really get immersed. I
You
met
do.
neighbors, I met friends, things like you just don't really do on vacation. So it was really great. I mean, I would definitely be open to doing that again as an adult in the future, maybe to retire. I've looked into that. I know you probably have too. So,
Ah.
but that's really when I got the travel bug.
Ah, okay. Okay. You know what? When I sit back and I'm listening to your story, because I was literally going to ask you, could you see yourself ever practicing law overseas and doing that route in your career, or you could just only see yourself maybe just retiring there once you're all said and done in America?
Yeah, unfortunately, with practicing law is one of the careers that you really can't do anywhere but in America, just with the way that the certifications go. So, my only shot of doing that abroad would be to work for a company that has a lot of business in the US,
I see.
but I wouldn't be practicing law in the traditional sense. So probably not at this point in life, but certainly as a retiree, I would be open to permanently living abroad. Certainly in Europe is beautiful. I mean, I've been to, I think, every country in Europe except Portugal, where I think, weren't you just there? I think that's my
Right.
last one. And I can't think of one that I really wouldn't want to live in. There's definitely some are nicer than others or more affordable, but they're all great in their own way, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree. Every country that I have visited, I ask myself after, spending some time there, and I look back and like, and I have to, could I ever see myself living here? Because it helps you, it puts you in a different mindset of really processing where you are. Just looking at their way of life. And, one of the things I always do in the first couple of days when I'm there, I'm really just taking in the culture, really studying the people and just how they do things. And I will say yes. In this last place I went to in Portugal, like once you get outside of Lisbon, like wow, I was like, wow, this is very gorgeous. And I have some friends of mine that are in Cascais, which is probably about an hour west, maybe at 45 minutes to an hour west of Lisbon, and it's just beautiful. And there's a part of it where it reminds me of it's like when you're driving. If you've been to California, you drive Pacific Coast Highway, and then
Hmm.
you see the beach, and then you look on the other side. There's like these huge mountain peaks, and I was just like, oh wow, this is very cool. So I yes, I could. There's a few other places I've been. We can definitely talk about that later. But I always say, one thing I love about travel is it puts me in this mental reset that I need to really just, take a break from America and just really take in something else. So with you, I think one of the things I wanted to ask you that's now that you went to undergrad in Ohio, you went to law school in Boston, then you went down to Raleigh, Durham, and then came to DC. So out of all these cities like that you've been to, and now that you've transitioned out to Jackson Hole, like so how is like the transition of all of these? What has been the greatest impact? Which city that has really helped you grow the most that you think, not only just professionally, but also personally as well?
Well, I would have to say Boston for sure. I mean, that was the first city that I lived in that wasn't, like my hometown area adjacent kind of thing. And that's where I really learned about like different types of food that we don't have in Kentucky. Or I don't want to paint the wrong picture of Kentucky, just the part where I'm from and like how I grew up. Like we weren't eating sushi, for example. I like that was the first time I had sushi was in Boston as an
Okay.
example. So I would say overall, that's where I really kind of as an adult became more exposed to other cultures, other types of people. Like where I'm from, everyone is white. I mean, people assume that, if you're from that part of the country, you're super racist. And it's not true, at least like where I'm from, because everyone is white. So like it's not, and I'm not articulating well, but like it's just not a thing that is ever even like on anybody's radar because everyone else is exactly the same as you. So
Right.
and those people, I shouldn't say everyone, what you were saying earlier, a lot of those people never leave. So like they don't see other cultures either, So like I can remember in Boston was the first time I ever saw a lesbian couple just like holding hands walking down the street. I think they had a baby stroller and I was like, wow, look at that, like I've never seen that, which I don't, good for them. Like, but
Right, right,
so
right.
I would say that was really the most crucial of like how I am today. That's where I got into professional sports, of course. My boy Tom Brady was very dreamy at the time. He's a little bit interesting now, but back then, 2007 and 8, where he was just like in his prime of winning Super Bowls, and same with the Celtics and the Bruins. Like that was really when I got exposed to a lot of stuff like that, and it was from work and networking and just like hustling around. I mean, I didn't have any money to do anything. So, but if somebody at the firm had an extra ticket to the Red Sox game, like I took it. So I would go on like a Tuesday and just like, yeah, I'll go to that, and it was coming from a place of yes to experience all these things that I had never done before growing up and had the opportunity to do that, and same with the food. I was saying like, we had Kentucky, like Olive Garden was our big, like if you went to prom or something, like that was, peak fine dining at the Olive Garden. So imagine my surprise when you get to Boston and the North End is just full of like real Italian people and like a million Italian restaurants. And it's just called Little Italy and just incredible food. It was like, oh, wow. Okay. So but yeah, I mean, I enjoyed my time in every place was different. DC was obviously a big eye opener of just politics and that sort of vibe of the city. We went
Yeah.
out several times just out on the town, and like the thing I would say about DC is everyone there seems kind of transient. They don't really stay for a long time. I don't know if that was your experience.
Yes,
And
I
I'm,
agree.
we both fulfilled that stereotype ourselves when we left.
We
But
definitely did.
yeah, I don't regret that. But that's really the only place I've lived, even here in Jackson Hole, with all of the wealth. Like in DC, people, the first thing they want to know is where do you go to school? Where do you work? Basically, how can you help me? Like, and it was just a little bit off putting after a while. It kind of got old. It was like, don't worry, I didn't go to Harvard. And I, don't work anywhere that I can help you. So like, it's, let's move on, talk about something else. So
Right.
yeah.
You spot on so many of your points. Especially, and I'll go back to your point of what you were saying about where we grew up. You're right. there was no fine dining at all. Like, for me, the first time I had Korean barbecue, that was in DC when I moved to DC. There was nothing like that. I think we had to drive because, like, when you were mentioning going to get groceries. So my family and I, because we were so far, away from the grocery store, we would literally make one trip that would last us for the whole month and get enough groceries.
Oh wow.
So yeah, because we had two freezers and then a refrigerator. Just like that's just how like my family did it. So
Mm.
um, you're right. The only organic that I can tell you that I experienced early on is my grandparents had two gardens, so they would plant, um, certain vegetables and things like that. But that was really the closest experience. Now, I know, like before I was born, they used to get milk delivered to the house.
Oh
So,
wow.
oh yeah, it was a whole different experience. Like my next door neighbor was a rancher, so he had a whole ranch. So sometimes there would be horses in our driveway that would get loose. So that was literally our experience. So I'm with you there. So getting the experience of living in a walkable city, I didn't get that experience until I lived in New York. And you're right, it was when you go see Little Italy and Little Brazil and all of that in New York. And like you mentioned, like seeing it in Boston, it's very eye opening coming from where we came from. So
Oh, sure.
um,
Do
yeah,
you
so you're
remember
right.
the first time you saw like a real Chinatown? Boston has one of those. The signs in Chinese, I'm like, what is going on here? And
Right,
my Kentucky accent back then was like even stronger than it is right now. But I was just like a little country bumpkin, like plopped down. And the one thing I think you're like me is like you fake
right,
it till you make it, right? So I tried to
right,
pretend to not be like impressed or intimidated, but internally everywhere I walked I was like, oh my god, look at that, but I never let on that I was like,
right,
oh
right.
yeah, okay.
Oh my God. I
Yeah,
love how you brought up the term country bumpkin. I haven't
yeah,
heard that in so long. Oh my God. That's something my dad used to say. And just a funny story. I remember when I first moved to New York, I walked into Saks Fifth Avenue. And this is when I had no sense of style or anything. And the sales associate just walks up to me and literally was just like, "Your style is so many seasons ago. Let me help you upgrade." I was like, "Oh, okay."
wow.
I was like, "All right."
I would have
Literally,
cried.
I had no choice but to, hand him my credit card. I was like, "All right,
Yeah,
yeah."
it's this good
So
sales tactic, shame your customer into
just, I was like, you know what? But I appreciated the transparency, but it definitely, yeah. So I totally get it. You're right. Where we come from, and then that experience, the dichotomy is unreal. It really, truly is. And you're right. Like Washington D.C. is very transient as well. Like a lot of people I met stayed temporarily and moved somewhere else. So, but now you got to tell me more about like what was like the big decision to leave DC, and you were like, all right, I'm going to Jackson Hole, like Wyoming. And I was like, when you told me that you were going to do this move a while ago, and I was like, I never really even asked you, like, the thought process of
yeah.
really what made you pick there? Because I still haven't even visited. I've heard a lot of great things about
Yeah, well, so you remember we were locked in that giant building
it.
from
Right.
what? How long in 2020? I think I was in my apartment alone for
Yeah.
over 30 days. I remember taking you a roll of toilet paper and leaving it
Right.
outside of your door because I had just luckily right before the shutdown and COVID happened had been like in Virginia Beach and just killing time, like had stocked up on a bunch of stuff while I had my car, in the suburbs. And so I had extra toilet paper, I remember, and you were like, I think I need some. And so I remember that. But I had a lot of time to think there, lockdown, and every week there was like a new law. So work was crazy. And that's the only thing that really had me sane, with everything going on. I just felt like everything was collapsing. And so my lease was up there at our building that July. And I started looking at ski towns because I do love to ski. I picked that up in college, but more so in Boston. And I really thought we were going to have another shutdown. And so I wanted to be where there weren't a lot of people, kind of the opposite of a big city. And so I started looking at ski towns online. And then Jackson Hole came up. Wyoming doesn't have any income tax. So I said, oh, that could be appealing. It was
Ah,
very naive at the time. I didn't realize about the housing crisis here. There's just like not hardly any housing because like 97% of the county where I live is owned by the federal government. So that's why the prices are crazy if you look at Zillow housing here. And it's hard to find a rental just with the seasonal nature of ski industry. And then people come in the summer for like raft guides and stuff. So I was having a hard time finding housing online. So I actually flew out here early that July 2020. It was like one of the only people on the plane. I'll never forget. I flew from DC to Dallas and then to here. And the Dallas airport, sorry, my dog is freaking out. Come here. Hey. All right. The Dallas airport had like probably one out of every 10 gates was open. Everything was closed. They made, a million announcements like, we don't have any food or water on the plane. Like, you have to buy your own kind of thing. And anyway, I came out here for the week. It was actually my birthday was the last day that I was here and got my apartment. Well, it's a townhouse. So I was renting, and it's the house I'm still in. I ended up buying it about a year later from the landlord. So I know you've seen online all my
yeah,
reno.
yeah,
There was quite a lot of work to do from where it started. So what it looks like now, but that's how it happened. So I just sold everything at Altair. I think you remember that. I think you took
yeah.
one or two things, and it was like so. Sorry. Hey, can you stop doing that? Thank you. Sorry,
I love
she's
it.
very
No, no, it's
is
fine.
outside.
He wants to join the
I
podcast.
drove out here. It took 3 days to get here from the East Coast, and I shipped out boxes, and that was it. I bought all new stuff, and I've been here ever since. So it's been 5 years this summer, and it's been great. I ski all the time, as you know. My Instagram is mostly skiing. And then summer is great. Like, it's a really nice time to visit in the summer. The weather is super nice. We don't have any humidity here at all, unlike Florida. It's pretty much the opposite of
Yeah,
what you're dealing with. But yeah, that's how it wasn't really. I'd never even been here, but it just seemed like a nice place to live, and it turns out that's true. And it's a really small town, so I've kind of gone full circle from where I started to where I am now. The difference is between Ashland, Kentucky, and here is I think we have the largest concentration of billionaires outside of Manhattan. And so there actually are some incredible restaurants for a town of 10,000 people. It's wild. There's like 4 Thai
oh,
restaurants. So yeah. So that's good. We have a Four Seasons. I mean, if you want to light $25 on fire for a cocktail, like you can do that here. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. They have like all the things of a big city, but in a small town. So
and only 10,000 people. Wow. Okay.
yeah, in the town of Jackson. I think the whole county has probably about 25,000, which is like makes encompasses like 5 towns. So Jackson is a town as well, and then
Okay.
Jackson Hole is the whole area, which there's some other towns, Wilson and Kelly, and then Teton Village, where the big ski resort is technically a separate town. So it's
Okay.
great. I can't believe you haven't been here with all
I
your
know.
travels. So
I know. I know. I have to add that to my list. Now, here's the
mhm.
thing. For the one, I've tried skiing. I realize I am not a great skier. So funny story is the first time I tried skiing. Now I know I didn't take lessons, and I was with a friend of mine, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try it. And then I was like, so first question, I was like, so how are we gonna get up the hill to get back down? And they were like, oh, you just get on the lift. I was like, oh, okay. So I get on the lift, and when we get all the way up to the top, I was like, all right, so how do we get down? You just jump. What? And I was literally, I jumped off and literally lost control. of myself going all the way down. And I was like, oh my God, how do I make it stop? And people were yelling like pizza sticks. And I was like, pizza sticks? What is and literally I didn't realize what they were trying to tell me is get my skis to try to connect and it'll help stop. And literally because I was about 500 feet away from running over somebody's kid. I
Oh
literally,
gosh.
you're right.
Yeah.
It was like the most nerve wracking thing. I was just like, okay, I should definitely learn how to do this properly because this was not good.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
it's hard to learn as an adult, you know. I mean, same for me. Like I didn't grow up skiing. We just didn't do that. But yeah, the
okay.
skiing you have the French fries like this, and then you pizza like this to stop. And that's what they tell the little kids. So you're gonna have a bad time if you French fry when you're supposed to pizza.
I will say literally, yeah. After seeing that, I was like, all right. I never went back. After then, I was just like, okay. Because no, I never went on a ski trip or anything like that as a kid. I did a lot of road trips with my dad, but nothing like that. So, but how did you learn?
I went in high school with our church youth group to West Virginia, a couple hours away from Kentucky. And fortunately, what I've experienced, and myself included, you either like know how to ski or you don't immediately. Like, and then it's a matter of learning how to turn and stop, and you get better and faster over time. But some people just don't have that balance. So I kind of was self-taught as well. And then all the time in Boston, you know, went up to, there's lots of resorts in Vermont, New Hampshire, and even there's like one or two in Massachusetts, but in Maine has some. And so I was kind of a once a year ski trip person,
Okay.
going, you know, like, I don't know, 4 days. And then right before COVID happened, I don't know if you remember, in December of 2019, I went to Aspen for the week with my
Okay.
boyfriend at the time. And that was my first time skiing out west. And I was like, oh, okay, I get what all the hype's about now, because the snow is really powdery and soft. And on the East Coast, it's kind of thick and wet and it gets icy. So we don't really have that here. So it's actually easier to ski out here to some extent.
Okay.
But the terrain is more difficult, like especially here at Jackson Hole. There's only 5 beginner runs. Everything else is pretty steep. So you wouldn't want to waste your money to ski here if you're not a
Okay.
good skier. There's plenty of other places to go that are more fun. Like we don't even have a lodge here. It's not that kind of setup. It's not like an Aspen, you know, or Vail. It's different. But yeah, the summer is a great time to visit, you know, just the weather. People, the saying goes here, come for the winter and stay for the summer. So anytime in the
Wow.
summer, we have, you know, all the cowboy rodeo stuff is here and the fair. And then the
Okay.
Snake River goes through here. So people like to fly fish and raft and bike and hike and camp and just all of the fun summer stuff you can do because it's not hot. It's like 80 every day and no humidity. It's sunny. It never rains, which can be a problem. We have wildfire smoke sometimes towards the end of the
Okay.
summer. But
Okay.
yeah, it's great. So you should add that to your list right up there with
I
Boston.
should. I definitely should. You recommended me two places already. I need to,
Yeah,
you know,
two
I
very
do. I
different.
do need to expand my travels more in the States. I do. Mine, a lot of mine has been internationally, so I need to do more. I definitely do. And what inspired me to think about doing it more is when I did the cross country drive when I moved back from Los Angeles to DC, right before I met you. So, and I just noticed how scenic that drive was. I was just like, wow, okay, I really need to explore more of the states. So
Yeah,
that
there's
is
so much to see. Yeah.
right, right. So, well, Andrew, well, the last thing here is I wanted to ask you before we close out here was it's like our inspirational section of the podcast here is so what's your goals now? What are you looking to do now at this point and stage in your life? What's your next thing you're trying to do?
Well, I'm trying to get it set up in a way that I can sort of retire from being a lawyer. I've been practicing for 18 years now. I'm the chief legal officer of the company I work for. So there's nowhere for me to go really up. And I'm getting to the point, I'm sure you can relate to this. I just feel like I've kind of accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. And, you know, I'm just barely in my early 40s here. So I have a lot of time to do something else. And so my real passion is real estate development, and I'd like to get involved in that. So I've been looking for some investments that would help me get into that area of real estate where you're there from the ground up building like a commercial space of some kind. So ultimately that's my goal, is to sort of pivot into developing maybe small apartment complexes or condo complexes, and just really being involved in the design and the go to market. And I just think that would be really fulfilling for me. And of course it's not as lucrative at the beginning, but that's what I'm trying to get to, the position where I can afford to just sort of step back and kind of start at the bottom of doing something new and different. And that's sort of what I would like to do longer term. And then, of course, I've been planning all along to be retired fairly early because I don't want to work forever. Your girl is trying to be on a beach with a margarita in Europe on a boat. Who knows? Like, I don't want to work forever. I'm not a workaholic, and I don't want to be one of those people that's 70 years old still like worrying about retirement or what's going to happen. So I'm trying to plan ahead while living in the now, which can be hard to do, but
Can be.
it's a
Yeah.
lot to balance. But that's what I'm working on for myself. But yeah,
Okay.
inspirationally wise, I would just tell anybody listening, I mean, it's not easy to do new things and to say yes to things, and change can
Yes.
be really scary. But for me personally, the alternative of not having tried has always been scarier for me. And so that's how I've sort of gone on the path that I've been on, was just saying yes to opportunities and jumping headfirst. And, there were times in my 20s for sure I was carrying credit card debt. And, it kind of bridged the gap. I mean, that was the only way to do it. And I don't regret that at all. But, nowadays, debt free, other than, my house. And I think you have to take those risks. It's not the end of the world. And if you fail, you just try something else.
I agree. I totally agree. Yes, it's, you know what they say? They say you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I
Right.
100% agree there. Well, Andrea, I thank you so much for your time here and
Oh,
sharing
yeah,
your
you're
story
welcome.
here. This was great here. Yeah, you definitely gave me some great pointers even for me.
Oh,
So no, I
well, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks for inviting me. I feel like I just talked about myself the whole time, which I don't normally I like to do. So hopefully it was helpful for you and maybe someone else listening. But yeah, happy to support your podcast here, and I appreciate being invited. And I learned some things about you too. I think I had forgotten that you lived in New York, so sorry that I did a little diss on New York. But I want you to go to Boston now, please. Promise me, and tell me what you
Yeah,
think of the two places now that you'll have been to both. So
absolutely. Yes. I'm going to do that. I definitely will because it's funny. Because I have a list of places that I need to hit in North America, and I started with Toronto because there's some places in Canada I haven't even explored yet. And I was like, you know what? I might do Boston. I still need to see Niagara Falls. So I think while I'm up there, I might just hit all three of those places because since it's
yeah,
already in the north, so I need to. But yeah,
yeah, you can fly to Boston, to Toronto from Boston in like an hour. I think it's very close.
okay,
And
okay.
then if you're really feeling adventurous, if you check the map, I believe the drive to Montreal from Boston is only about 5 hours north.
Oh,
Yeah. So you could
good to know.
bebop around up there, but yeah, it is a beautiful area. And if you can't get it together to go soon, then I would definitely go in the fall because you'll see all of the leaves changing and it's
Okay.
so beautiful.
Wow. See, and my travel bug has already like eating away at me this year. So
Sure.
so
No.
thank you, Andrew, for feeding it more. Now you got me more
Yeah.
curious.
Sorry. Sorry,
No.
not sorry.
Well, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I appreciate you joining today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, I'll talk to you soon then. If you need anything else, just give me a shout. I'll be here.
I will do. Thank you. All right. You too. Bye. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is, yep, Dr. Andrea Coffey. Another small town, story who's done, big things in her life. So thank you all for chiming in and listening today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and look forward to our next episode.